Welcome to The Real Grind, hosted by Gowans and produced by Armen Dilanchian. This episode is brought to you by 4D Legacy Studios.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Real Grind. This episode is brought to you by 4D Legacy Studios. I'm your host, Gowans, and today's show is produced by Armen Dilanchian. Let me just say you are in for a deep, and I really mean eye-opening episode. If you have ever scratched your head wondering how the heck filmmakers actually fund their films, you are not alone. Many people have wondered about this. Movie financing is one of the most misunderstood, yet absolutely crucial pieces of the industry. And here's the thing, whether you're a first-time filmmaker with a passion project bubbling inside you, or a content creator looking to get your documentary funded, or maybe you're already producing and just trying to navigate this wild, shifting landscape, we've got you covered today. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to tune into episode 3, but I interviewed Lumen Beltran. She's a filmmaker and aspiring actress, and she created a film, Three Atas and a Wedding, that she would like to make into a TV series. And she's currently working on getting funding, and she was talking about the ups and downs of filmmaking and the challenge of getting funding. And if what Lumen mentioned during the interview for episode 3, if any of that resonated with you, you might find that this episode is particularly helpful. I hope you'll find it informative. Today, we're going to go in really deep. I mean, real deep, like line item deep. What do investors really want type of deep? We're going to talk about all the classic funding routes, your private equity, pre-sale, soft money, and then we'll veer into the new school stuff, streaming strategies, digital first models, even blockchain and NFTs. Yes, we are not holding back. We're going to cover everything. And I mean, you can get this information by going on Google, by YouTube, by using YouTube and doing a keyword search for things like film funding and film grants. You can join Facebook groups. You can look up this information by going on LinkedIn, doing some searches for articles on this topic. But you'll probably find that it is a very full packed landscape. There's a lot of information, which is great, but it can be overwhelming. It can be daunting. It can make you want to procrastinate about getting funding because it looks like so much work and so much information to digest and to go through. So this podcast, this particular episode is consolidating that information. We're going to provide you with a good, clear overview. I'm hoping you'll find it engaging, and we're going to save you a lot of research time and phone calls to uncover information. We are going to give you a good summary during this episode. And if you are out there and thinking about how to get funding for your film, I encourage you to tune into shows like Shark Tank and Dragon's Den. So Shark Tank is broadcasted in the United States and Canada, and the Dragon's Den is like a popular Canadian show. So these shows feature entrepreneurs that are trying to get funding for their businesses from these dragons or these sharks, these very experienced entrepreneurs, angel investors that have a lot of money and that are actively looking for investment opportunities. And even though these shows aren't specifically for people in the film industry, like the entrepreneurs that compete on the shows, the contestants, they're in a wide variety of industries. But you might find it helpful to watch these shows and observe who gets the money, observe who is prepared, who seems to be lacking confidence, who didn't do their homework, who has turned off the judges, the sharks, the dragons, and who has impressed them. And you might get some ideas. You might also find that these shows are inspiring. They'll help you to not feel alone, when it comes to trying to get money and trying to persuade and impress and instill confidence in your project. So I encourage you to tune into those shows. They're on YouTube, they're on television. There's many different versions around the world in many different countries, from India to Africa. It seems like every country has their own version of Shark Tank. You'll find these shows very helpful. And you know what? That's what you're going to be experiencing. You are going to be like those contestants. You need to be prepared. You need to know your numbers. And this process involves transitioning. So, right now, as a filmmaker, you are probably thinking very artistically. You're thinking like a creator. You're in love with your project, but you have to start thinking like a salesperson or like a business partner. In a way, you're partnering with these investors and you need them to feel good about you. They need to believe in you. You need to know your numbers and you need to be prepared. So, we're going to cover everything from micro budget indie films, the kind shot on your cousin's Canon, those fun, low key types of projects, to those full blown studio tent poles with $150 million price tags. So, if you're sitting there with your morning coffee or a protein shake after a good workout, get ready, because the real grind is about to break down the business behind the business of show business. So, maybe you're sipping some coffee. I need to take a sip of water right now. My throat is so dry. All right. So, let's start at the very beginning. What exactly is film financing? At its simplest, it is the act of finding the money to make your movie. Now that sounds simple, right? But just wait. The truth is, financing a film is not so simple. It's more like piecing together a puzzle. And when the pieces don't always fit, it can be frustrating. Many times they don't. And these puzzle pieces can come from totally different boxes. You've got equity investments, tax incentives, loans, maybe some pre-sales, crowdfunding if you're ambitious, maybe even a product placement deal or two. There's many different possibilities, many different puzzle pieces. And there's so many different combinations, right? So many different ways that you can combine these puzzle pieces, these different ways of getting your funding. And these methods, these paths for getting funding can vary wildly depending on what type of film you're making. So let's look at some numbers just to ground us. According to the Motion Picture Association, the average budget for a studio-backed movie in the United States is somewhere between $70 million and $100 million. Now, what about indie films? They're a way different ball game. Think apples and oranges. Those budgets range from about 250,000 up to maybe 5 million. And if you're going micro budget, we're talking under 100,000 and often way below that amount. So yeah, the money math is all over the place. It all depends on the type of film, but you'll find that the fundamentals, the key ideas are pretty consistent. And that's what we're going to unpack during this episode. When we talk about core financing models, we're talking about the main ways films actually get funded. And first up, there's equity financing. So this is when someone, usually a private investor or a group, puts in real cash, and in return, they get a cut of your profits. Now, that seems pretty simple, right? Yes, it's simple in theory, but in practice, it's all about trust, vision, and numbers. The investors want to know that they're not throwing their money into a black hole. These investors could be angel investors, wealthy individuals, family offices, or sometimes even a company looking for exposure. But make no mistake, these people want a return. They want money just as much as you want money. They'll want to know what your distribution plan looks like, who your audience is, what genre you're working in, what the monetization strategy is. And if you don't have the answers for them, you're not going to get a check from them. You're going to be toast. You're going to be black toast. And I don't mean to be blunt, but you will fall on your face. You will fall on your face. You need to be prepared. It's essential. Now, let's move on to debt financing. This is when you borrow money. So, loans, just like in regular life. So, a loan for a car, a loan for a house, the same sort of thing. Now, the most common type of loan is something called gap financing. This is when you borrow against expected income from distribution deals you haven't closed yet. So let's say you're you're 70% financed and you've got some pending deals in the works. A lender might front you the remaining 30% to get you across the finish line. Then you've got bridge loans. That's for when you need short-term cash to get you from development into production. But remember, with loans, you have to pay them back, interest and all. And that payback usually comes out of your first revenues. All right, now let's talk about pre-sales. Pre-sales are when you sell the rights to your movie in specific territories before the movie is even made. It sounds kind of crazy, right? A little bit off the wall, but trust me, it happens all the time in the film industry, especially with the genre films. So think action, horror, thrillers, and especially if you have got a bankable star. So let's say you have an action script and you've attached a name actor. So somebody that is famous, think of some hottie or cutie or some screen legend, somebody recognizable, think the Emmys, somebody that struts down the red carpet. That person is attached to your film. You take that package to a sales agent. The agent shops it around at markets like Cannes, Berlin, or AFM. If buyers bite, you get upfront cash or a contract you can borrow against. This is one of the big secrets of indie film financing. It's not always about raising the money, it's about structuring it in a smart way. It's about how you construct the success. So, just generating the funding, it's about so much more than that. You need to be systematic and you need to be strategic in terms of how you structure things, how you put the building blocks for success together. Now, let's think about one of the filmmakers' favorite tools: tax incentives and rebates. We're talking free-ish money. Seriously, I'm not joking. Free money. So countries and US states offer rebates to encourage productions to shoot in their regions. So Georgia, Louisiana, New Mexico, Canada, there are so many productions made in Canada, in the Banff area, the mountainous areas in Calgary, Alberta. For example, the UK, Australia, these places all offer serious incentives. These rebates can cover 20% to 40% of your total spend. And the best part is you don't usually have to pay them back. But you do have to qualify. There's rules, there's guidelines you need to follow, and you usually need to spend a certain amount of money in the region. Then you've got grants and fellowships as a source of funding your film. So this route is especially useful for documentaries, underrepresented voices, or issue-driven projects. So think activism, think social change, think about those types of film projects that help to make the world a better place and help society to make progress. Places like Sundance Institute, Chicken and Egg Pictures, ITVS, and Catapult Film Fund. These organizations don't just offer funding, they offer guidance, they offer community, they offer mentorship. And even though you need to be sharp and on the ball and really good with your numbers, and it can be very competitive to get funding, you might find that there are some organizations that might really be receptive and open to phone calls. This is something that Lumen mentioned when I interviewed her for episode 3, Lumen, the filmmaker. She was mentioning how Telefilm, for example, which is a Canadian funding organization, they welcome calls. They like hearing ideas. They like talking to creative people. So yes, it's competitive, but if you get in, you're not just gaining funds, you're joining a network. And even when you're in the process of trying to get in, you might find that there's support. There's a lot of community mentorship and people who are eager to hear your ideas. But don't get me wrong, there's definitely going to be rejection, but along the way, you might find some allies and some great people willing to support you. Now, let's touch on crowdfunding. You know the names. There's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Seed and Spark. Crowdfunding can be a game changer. It can be so high impact and powerful, but it's not a silver bullet. It's not a magical pill. Remember, it works best when you already have an audience or a compelling personal story. And for features over $200,000, it's brutal. But for short films, proof of concept, or just building buzz, it can absolutely be a game changer. Let's look at product placement and brand integration. So this is, like when you're watching a film and you see an actor or actress drinking Coke, or maybe they are driving a Mercedes. Brands will pay to be featured in movies. Companies will pay to be featured in the movie. It helps them with their marketing. It helps them with their visibility and sales. It could be a tech startup, a coffee brand, a luxury watch, whatever aligns with your story. It's about business chemistry, synergy, and visibility. So you might find a company that is eager to be featured in your film, and you can leverage that. That's an opportunity, a pathway to making money. So, all right, that's the toolkit. Now we need to talk about the mindset, the place that your mind needs to be in. Because if you want to raise money, you've got to think like the people writing the checks. You have to think like a business partner. You have to think like a salesperson. You have to put yourself in the shoes of those people, those potential investors. You need to persuade them. You need to sell effectively. You need to have a strong business plan. These people that you're going to be pitching to, they know how to make money. They know a good thing when they see it. And for them, a good thing is a filmmaker that has a strong business plan and a filmmaker that knows their numbers. It's a filmmaker that has done their homework. So you need to adopt the investor's mindset. Investors are not looking at your movie as art. They're not filmmakers necessarily. Sometimes you'll find like people in the film industry that will, like filmmakers who will invest in film projects, but many times they are not thinking the way artists do. They're not thinking like filmmakers and creators. They're looking at risk. They're looking at the rewards. They want to know What's the ROI? What's the return on investment? Who's the target audience? How are you releasing this thing? Who else is involved? Have you or your team done this before? They're not just comparing you to other movies. They're comparing you to real estate flips, to startups, to tech ventures. During this journey of seeking funding, you need to think like a business person, like an entrepreneur, like a salesperson. Think about how you can create a solid business plan. You have to show how you will lower risk. You have to demonstrate that you can deliver ROI, return on investment. So if you don't come prepared with the numbers, comps, and a clear path to monetization, you are not going to get very far. Now, I know that sounds kind of discouraging, but try to view this as a fun, exciting journey. You're going to learn a lot. It's going to be a roller coaster. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be things happening that you didn't anticipate. There's going to be a lot of surprises, but hey, when life is predictable, it can be boring, right? So try to look at this as an exciting journey, but do your homework. You've got to be that diligent student. You've got to do your homework and you've got to be prepared. Now, here's something kind of sobering. It's a bit kind of sad. According to a 2024 report by Variety Insights, only about 30% of indie films recoup their investment. But you know what? There's some good news. The ones that do tend to have a few things in common. They do festival placements. So think Sundance, think South by Southwest, think of the Toronto International Film Festival. They do early distribution deals. They get things locked in before premiere. They have a clear genre and a defined audience. They have some level of name recognition in cast or crew. And most importantly, investors want to see skin in the game. That means you've already raised a chunk of your budget or locked in talent or landed a sales agent. Earlier, I mentioned those shows like Dragon's Den and Shark Tank. Even though those entrepreneurs aren't in the film industry, you can learn from that kind of scenario, that kind of environment. Those dragons, those sharks, the judges, the people with the money, they're always asking the contestants, the entrepreneurs, about how much money they have made so far, how much they have sold, what their revenues are like, what their profits are like. These investors, these people that are going to provide you with funding, they're almost thinking, I wouldn't say in a parasitic way, like they're leeches or they're going to take advantage of filmmakers, but they are trying to piggyback. They want to attach themselves to people who are already succeeding. They're not social workers. They're not thinking in a charitable way. They want to team up with people who are already succeeding. They want to team up with winners. So it's very important to impress them. They want to see that you have got skin in the game. That means that you've already raised a huge portion of your budget or locked in talent or landed a sales agent. Now, you're probably wondering where you find these investors. That is a great question. First up, the film markets. That's a great resource. That's a great place. So think AFM, Cannes, Berlin, Toronto. These are the major networking arenas. You meet buyers, you meet sales agents, fellow producers, potential financiers. Then you've got pitch forums and labs. So think Film Independent, IFP Gotham Week, and Sundance Catalyst. These spaces are curated and intimate, and they often lead to real money. They're gathering places. They're like a shortlisted environment of like-minded people, and you can get results quickly in those places. It's a concentration of people thinking in the same way. There's also the angel network, so groups like Film Angels, Angel List, or local investment clubs. Time for some H2O. I've got a throat that is very dry right now. You might even get backers through social impact circles. So, if your project deals with issues like climate, education, or equality, you might have some luck with those groups. And here's one that many people overlook: wealth managers and financial advisors. So, think investment advisors. There's tons of them on LinkedIn. Coincidentally, many of them target entrepreneurs or, people that they think might be interested in their financial planning services. So these like investment advisors, they might have somebody in their portfolio that is interested in investing in films. It's a door worth knocking on. You might be able to convince an advisor that your film fits their client's passion portfolio. You can also explore film finance consultancies. So these are companies that specialize in matchmaking projects with capital. So firms like Cinematic Media, XYZ Films, or Creative Future can help package your film for presentation. All right, let's say you found a potential backer. What do you do next? You need to create a killer pitch. Your pitch shouldn't be, hey, I've got a cool idea. Your pitch has to be, here's the story, here's the market, here's the plan. You need a pitch deck. You need a script or a tight treatment. You need a top sheet budget. You need sales projections. You need comparable films. You need to have examples of films that are similar to your film that have become huge blockbuster successes. And you need bios of your team. The investors need to know that you have built a strong team, a team that has individuals who are committed, that have expertise, that are knowledgeable. You need to impress them. They need to believe in you. They need to know that your film is worth investing in. So let's say you're making an 80-minute horror film for $225,000. Don't just say, it's like the Blair Witch Project. That's not good enough. Say it targets a Gen Z audience via TikTok and YouTube pre-rolls. It's modeled after breakout indies like The Wretched, which saw a 410% return on investment. They want numbers and they want proof that you've already got an audience, that you've already got followers. Remember, these investors, they want to piggyback. They want to attach themselves to people who are already successful, people who are already making money, that have raised some of the funding and that already have an audience. The investors don't want wishy-washy dreams. They want data, they want the hard facts, they want the numbers, and they want confidence and they want clarity. You also need to know what not to do. There are certain things that filmmakers do and it really hurts them. So here is a rapid fire on what filmmakers get wrong. They pitch with no business plan. That is wrong. You have to think like a business partner, and having a business plan is absolutely necessary. It's also important to think like a business person. Think about the market. Don't just focus on this film you've created that you're in love with and the artistic side of things. You have to think like a business person. You have to have a business plan. You have to think like a salesperson. You have to talk about numbers and value and a return on investment. And please don't start too late on audience building. Every film needs an audience. And if an investor is going to invest in a film, they want to know that you already have an audience. And it's key that you attach very strong collaborators, have a good network, have people that you have teamed up with that are successful, that really can deliver, people who can collaborate. You need to show these investors that you have got a strong team, that you've got connections. They want to do business with people who are successful. And one of the worst things that filmmakers do is they ghost, or they fumble on follow-up. So what will happen is they will do a pitch and then they will vanish. Vanish from the universe. They will just disappear. It's very important to follow up. That helps the investors to believe in you. They need to know that you're going to be persistent, that they can rely on you, that you're not going to flake. They want somebody that is solid. You have to show that they can believe in you. So it's very important to not ghost them. Don't fumble on follow up. And you are going to get ghosted. Be prepared for that. There's going to be people who will ghost you, but you should never be the ghoster. You need to show that you're reliable. Professionalism is non-negotiable. If you're asking for $250,000, act like you're raising $25 million. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating. You need to exceed expectations. You need to persuade. You need to impress them. All right, before we close, let's talk new models and streaming, all that buzzing, sexy stuff that everybody is talking about these days. The game has changed. Streaming has flipped everything on its head. We all know that. Amazon Prime Video Direct. It can allow you to upload your film yourself. Things have changed so much. There are so many opportunities to get creative. There's Tubi, there's Plex, there's Roku. They pay through ad revenue splits. Even Vimeo On Demand has a niche loyal base. Then there's Web3. So blockchain-backed films, NFT-based crowd ownership. They're experimental, yes, no doubt about that, but worth watching. And more filmmakers are teaming up with influencers to co-market and share revenue. It can be a great way to build an audience. Piggyback, ally yourself with influencers. It's grassroots meets Hollywood. So you're wondering what you should do now. My advice is to bookmark some sites. So some good sites are Sundance Collab, Stage 32, Film Freeway, Slated, No Film School, The Blacklist. And these aren't just tools, they are lifelines. They can save you as a filmmaker. These organizations can open doors for you. They can lead to your big break. They can lead to an opportunity that blows you away. And that's it for today's episode of The Real Grind. If you're still with me, thank you so much. I hope this episode gave you a real look into what it takes to finance your film. Whether you're typing your first draft, prepping your pitch, or negotiating your final investor call, just know you are not alone. This show was brought to you by 4D Legacy Studios and produced by Armen Dilanchian. I'm Karen Gowans. Until next time, keep grinding and keep creating.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Real Grind. Tune in next week for more filmmaking insights. This episode was brought to you by 4D Legacy Studios, where stories matter.